Welcome back to the Breathe Blueprint podcast. This podcast is for high performers, leaders, and entrepreneurs who carry a lot of responsibility and want their success to last. Here, we talk about performance, pressure, capacity, and the nervous system behind it all. Not in a dramatic burnout and breakdown way, but in a calm, intelligent, sustainable way. Because real performance isn't about pushing harder, it's about building the internal capacity that allows you to keep going without burning out. There's a role high performers often grow into without ever consciously choosing it. The reliable one. The one who gets it done. The one who people turn to. The one who doesn't drop the ball. It sounds like a compliment, and it is. But over time, it can quietly become a trap. Most people who end up as the reliable one didn't set out to carry more than everyone else. They were just capable. They followed through, and they took responsibility seriously. So naturally, more came their way. A bit more at work, a bit more in the family, a bit more emotionally for other people. And because they could handle it, they did. And what starts as strength slowly becomes expectation. Not because anyone formally decided it should be that way, but because competence attracts responsibility. This is something psychologists sometimes call role reinforcement. The more consistently you show up in a certain way, the more that role becomes attached to your identity, both in other people's eyes and your own. And over time, being reliable stops feeling like something you do. It starts feeling like who you are. And that's where the cost begins. Responsibility rarely arrives in big, obvious chunks. It creeps. One extra project. One extra favour. One more person leaning on you emotionally. One more thing you quietly take care of because it's easier than explaining why you can't. Each piece feels manageable on its own, but your nervous system doesn't measure stress in tasks, it measures it in load, and load accumulates. Chronic responsibility without sufficient recovery keeps the nervous system in a more activated state. When the system is always slightly on, it reduces your ability to fully switch off, emotionally and physically. You might still be coping. You might still be performing. You might still be being the one everyone relies on. But inside, your system is carrying more than it has space for. And over time, something subtle begins to happen. You become more efficient, but less present. You get better at managing tasks, but worse at experiencing your own life. And this is where we need to pause for a moment. Before we carry on, let's take a brief breathe break. Nothing dramatic, nothing to fix, just a small pause to let your system settle. If you can, sit back slightly in your seat. Let your shoulders drop, unclench your jaw, and let your tongue rest at the bottom of your mouth. Gently bring your attention to your breathing. No need to change it yet, just notice it. Notice the air moving in and the air moving out. Now, begin to slow the exhale just a little. Not forcing it, just allowing the breath out to be slightly longer than the breath in. In through the nose, and a slow breath out. Longer exhales signal safety to the nervous system. They help the body shift out of a constant alert and into a more regulated state. So let's take 3 breaths like that. Breathing in, and slowly out. Again in, and out. A little longer. And one more time in, and a slow, steady exhale. Now, let your breathing return to normal. Gently notice your body. Notice the 3 points of contact. Your feet on the floor, your back against the chair, and your hands resting somewhere. This is what a small increase in capacity can feel like. Not dramatic, just a little space. A little less internal pressure. You haven't fixed everything. You haven't solved your workload. But you've just shown your nervous system that it doesn't have to stay switched on at full volume all the time. And even small moments like this, repeated regularly, help protect the capacity that your performance depends on. Alright, let's continue. Even a small pause can remind your system that you're allowed to exist outside of responsibility, even briefly. Because one of the hidden costs of being the reliable one is that your nervous system rarely gets to drop the role. You are the one who holds things together. but who holds you? There's an important distinction here between leadership and self-abandonment. Leadership is choosing to take responsibility from a place of capacity. Self-abandonment is taking responsibility at the expense of your own capacity. From the outside, they can look identical. You're still doing the same tasks, still showing up, still being dependable. But internally, they feel very different. Leadership feels grounded. You may be busy, but you feel steady. Self-abandonment feels tight, pressured, slightly resentful, slightly trapped. Like you are not allowed to have needs because other people's needs always come first. And high performers often override those signals, because letting something drop doesn't just feel like changing your workload. It can feel like failing as a person. If your identity is built around being capable, strong, and reliable, stepping back can trigger guilt, anxiety, or a sense of letting people down. So instead of reducing load, you increase endurance. But endurance is not the same as capacity. Endurance is pushing through while your internal resources are running low. Capacity is having enough internal space to carry the responsibility without losing yourself in the process. When endurance becomes your main strategy, you start to lose things you might not immediately connect to stress. Spontaneity, emotional availability, creativity, lightness. You become highly functional, but less alive. You might notice you're more irritable at home, less patient in conversations, or mentally elsewhere even when you're physically present. And this isn't because you're failing, it's just because your system has been prioritising responsibility over recovery for far too long. The nervous system can only stay in a heightened state for so long before it starts conserving energy. And when it conserves energy, it reduces access to emotional range and connection. So you don't just feel tired, you feel flat. And the solution isn't to stop being reliable. Reliability is a strength, but it needs boundaries, recovery, and shared responsibility to remain sustainable. Sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is allow yourself not to be the strong one for a moment, to let someone else step in, to say no without over-explaining, to recognise that your capacity matters just as much as your output. Because real strength is not about how much you carry while running on empty. It's about knowing how to protect the system that allows you to keep showing up over the long term. So here's something to reflect on. Where are you being reliable out of genuine choice and capacity? And where are you being reliable because you don't feel allowed not to be? That question isn't about blaming yourself. It's about noticing where your nervous system might be holding more than it was designed to carry alone. Sustainable performance includes the ability to sometimes not be the fixer, not be the organiser, and not be the one who absorbs everything. Because real strength includes capacity, not just endurance. If this episode resonated, it's usually a sign that your nervous system isn't asking for more effort, it's asking for more capacity. That's exactly why I created the High Performer Scorecard. It helps you see where your energy, recovery, and nervous system capacity might be under strain, so you can rebuild performance in a way that actually lasts. You can find the scorecard through the links in the show notes. And if you found this helpful, share it with someone else who carries a lot but rarely slows down. I'll see you in the next episode.